welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're tackling one of history's really enduring puzzles. It comes from 17th century France, that whole glittering, but also quite shadowy era.
Yes, the man in the iron mask. Or perhaps the man in the velvet mask, as we might discover.
Exactly. We're talking about that mysterious prisoner, the one known to legend, mainly because of the mask he always wore.
And the core questions are just fascinating, aren't they? Who was he?
Right.
What could he possibly have done to warrant being hidden away like that?
And why was just knowing who he was apparently so incredibly dangerous?
That's the crux of it. A threat to the state itself, perhaps.
So our goal here in this deep dive is to look at the sources we've got, the records, the letters, the speculation, the legends, and try to pull out the key facts, the insights, and maybe get a handle on why this story still fascinates us so much.
Okay, so where do we begin? The timeline seems pretty clear on the start date.
It does. Let's rewind to July 1669. The setting is the fortress of Pignerol, way up in the French Alps.
And into this remote prison arrives a new, unnamed inmate. He's placed under the charge of the governor, a man named Benin d'Auvergne de Saint-Maur.
Saint-Maur.
Yeah.
He's a key figure, isn't he? He stays with the prisoner for decades.
The prisoner's entire recorded life, essentially. Yeah. And the instructions Saint-Maur gets about this guy are, well, completely off the charts.
Yeah, these aren't your standard prison directives. They come straight from the top, from Louis XIV's powerful minister, Louvois.
And the main order? Secrecy. Absolute, total secrecy.
No exceptions.
None. The orders are crystal clear, even chilling. Nobody sees his face. Nobody hears him speak beyond, absolute necessity.
And if someone did reveal his identity, even by accident?
The penalty was death, explicitly stated.
Wow. So this isn't just about locking someone up. It's about completely erasing them.
Precisely. It's an active obliteration of identity. And the mask is central to that.
The mask. Now, our sources, some of the early accounts, mention it was actually black velvet, right?
That's what some records suggest. The whole iron mask idea, that iconic image, seems to come later. Voltaire really popularized that.
But whether it was velvet or iron, the purpose was the same.
Absolutely. To make him faceless. To remove the primary way we recognize someone.
Which really underlines your point. It suggests his face was the danger.
Exactly. If you just want to hide someone away, you stick them in a cell with no windows, maybe solitary confinement. But a mask that implies his features, his appearance itself, held the secret.
Okay, so let's trace his life behind bars. He's at Pignerol initially.
Right. And he doesn't stay there forever. Over more than 30 years, whenever Saint-Maur is transferred to govern a different prison, the prisoner goes with him.
Like a package deal.
Almost, yeah. From Pignerol, they move to the Île Sainte-Marguerite. That's an island fortress off the coast near Cannes.
A pretty secure location.
Very. And then, finally, in 1698, they make the move to the big one, the Bastille in Paris.
The most notorious state prison in France.
And throughout all these moves, the security remains just extraordinary. Consistently so.
Specially prepared cells. Isolation from other inmates.
Always kept apart. The level of caution never wavers. It tells you something about how important this secret was considered year after year.
But here's a weird twist, isn't it? The conditions inside the cell weren't always deliberately harsh.
That's another perplexing part. Compared to, say, common criminals or even other political prisoners of the time, the sources suggest he had relative comforts.
Decent food, proper clothes.
Sometimes books, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Even a musical instrument, a lute or a guitar, is mentioned in some accounts.
So it's this strange mix, total identity erasure and extreme security, but also a certain level of basic care, maybe even privilege.
It definitely suggests he wasn't just some random peasant, but whatever his status, the mask always stayed on.
Always. And Saint-Maur's, he was the only constant, the gatekeeper.
He was, and he took that secret to his grave, it seems. He never broke his silence.
Which brings us to the end of the story, or at least the prisoner's end. November 19th, 1703. He dies in the Bastille.
Yes. And the secrecy machine doesn't stop there. Not at all.
They bury him the very next day, right? Under a false name.
Under the name Marchioli, in the local parish cemetery. Very quick, very quiet.
And then the cleanup crew moves in.
Oh, yeah. Strict orders. His cell was basically stripped bare. Walls scraped, furniture removed or destroyed, all his belongings, clothes, bedding, everything burned.
Anything that could possibly offer a clue.
Systematically erased. They were incredibly thorough.
But, when you try that hard to bury something?
It backfires, in a way. The sheer effort makes people wonder even more. Whispers must have started almost immediately.
Absolutely. Who could possibly warrant that level of state-sponsored secrecy ordered by the Sun King himself? It just begs the question.
And that question has echoed down through history, hasn't it? It's fueled centuries of speculation.
Starting with the most sensational theory, the one everyone knows thanks to books and movies.
You mean the Voltaire and Dumas version?
Yeah.
Hmm.
The idea that he was Louis XIV's twin brother, maybe even the older twin.
Yeah. Talk about historical dynamite. A secret twin, a rival claimant to the throne hidden away to prevent chaos, maybe civil war.
It's incredibly dramatic. You can totally see why that idea took hold and became the legend. It explains the secrecy, the mask.
It explains everything perfectly from a storytelling perspective. But when historians dig into the actual surviving documents...
The picture gets a bit muddier.
A lot muddier, yeah. Though still very mysterious. The name that keeps cropping up in the official letters, especially around that key time, 1669, when the prisoner arrives with Sainte-Marguerite.
He's Eustache Dauger.
Eustache Dauger, yes. His name appears in correspondence between the minister Louvois and Sainte-Marguerite.
Okay, so we have a name linked to the right time and place. What do those letters actually say about this Dauger?
Well, there's a really crucial letter from Louvois, dated July 1669. It gives Sainte-Marguerite incredibly strict instructions for Dauger's custody, the secrecy, the isolation, threatening death if he speaks about anything important, all the stuff we've talked about.
Right. Sounds like our man.
But, and this is the huge but, the letter also describes Dauger specifically as only a valet.
Only a valet. But the security measures are fit for, well, a king's twin.
Exactly. That's the contradiction right there in the primary source. It makes no sense on the surface.
So the existence of Eustache Dauger, imprisoned under Sainte-Marguerite with these crazy orders, that's pretty well documented.
The documents seem clear on that point. The real mystery, then, isn't who was initially imprisoned under those orders it seems to have been this Dauger. The question is why?
Why would someone dismissed as only a valet need that level of security? Treatment usually reserved for major threats to the state.
That's the puzzle historians focus on. If he wasn't a royal twin, what secret could make a valet so dangerous to Louis XIV?
Maybe the valet description was inaccurate. Or a cover.
That's one line of thought. Or perhaps he really was a valet, but he overheard something, saw something, got involved in something way above his station.
And like what kind of thing?
Well, think about the secrets swirling around a royal court. Sensitive diplomatic negotiations, maybe? Knowledge of a major scandal involving high-ranking people?
Or even something like an assassination plot.
Possibly. Something that, if revealed, could destabilize the kingdom or seriously embarrass the king.
What about that affair of the poisons? That was a huge scandal around that time, wasn't it?
It was massive. Rocked the French aristocracy in the late 1670s, early 1680s. Accusations of poisoning, black magic, plots. It reached very high levels.
So maybe Dauger knew something connected to that.
It's plausible someone with inside knowledge of that kind of dangerous stuff, regardless of their rank, might well be considered a threat that needed silencing permanently.
Or other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
A disgraced diplomat who knew too much state business. A captured spy whose identity couldn't be revealed.
Any of those could potentially explain the paradox, you see. The valet who required precautions fit for royalty.
So Dauger is the leading candidate based on the paper trail, despite the valet description.
For many historians, yes. But he's definitely not the only name ever suggested. The speculation has run wild over the centuries.
Like Nicolas Fouquet. He was Louis XIV's finance minister, very powerful, then dramatically arrested and imprisoned.
Right, and Fouquet was imprisoned at Pignerol, under Sainte-Marguerite, around the same time Dauger arrived. So there's a connection.
But the timing's wrong, isn't it? Fouquet officially died in 1680.
Exactly. The official records state Fouquet died decades before the masked man did in the Bastille in 1703. So unless there was a massive cover-up of his death, too, it doesn't fit.
Okay, who else? There was an Italian diplomat.
Count Hercule Antonio Mattioli. He definitely angered Louis XIV by double-crossing him in a secret treaty negotiation over a town called Casale.
And he was imprisoned.
Oh, yes. Abducted by the French and imprisoned for years, some of it under Sainte-Marguerite. But again, when you look closely at the documented details of Mattioli's imprisonment where he was held, when it doesn't quite seem to match the specific trajectory of the masked prisoner. And remember the burial name, Marchioli. Some see an echo there, but it's not conclusive.
Close, but maybe no cigar.
Seems that way for Mattioli. And then you get into the really, well, less historically grounded theories.
The wild ones. Molière, the playwright.
Yeah, or even D'Artagnan, the famous musketeer.
Fun ideas, But probably just speculation feeding off the mystery.
Almost certainly. They show how much this story captured the imagination, but they don't really hold up against the available evidence.
Which brings us back to the evidence itself.
Yeah.
It's frustratingly incomplete, isn't it?
Deeply frustrating. We have these tantalizing glimpses, the cryptic letters from Louvois, those ambiguous prison register entries, the Sainte-Marguerite connection, but nothing absolutely solid. No smoking gun.
And the mask itself remains just baffling. We keep coming back to it.
Because it's such a specific theatrical measure. As we said, if you just want to hide someone, solitary confinement, maybe a windowless cell, that does the job.
But the mask, it makes you think his face itself was the problem.
It really does. Either it was a face that was far too well known, maybe a disgraced nobleman, a former courtier, someone who would be instantly recognized.
Or the more dramatic possibility.
Or his face revealed something. A forbidden resemblance, perhaps. A likeness to the king, hinting at some dangerous secret about parentage or lineage that had to be suppressed at all costs.
It adds another layer of intrigue entirely. So, after all this time, hundreds of years, why are we still talking about him? Why does this mystery endure?
I think it hits something deep in us. It's the ultimate mystery about identity, isn't it? In a time when your name, your family, your place in society was everything.
Here's a man who was deliberately stripped of all of that.
Erased.
Exactly. And I think that resonates with fears we all might have on some level, fears of being silenced, of having our identity denied by power, of just disappearing.
Plus, it's just a cracking good story, right? State secrets, hints of royal scandal, the cold hand of absolute power.
All of that. He's become this powerful symbol, really. A symbol of injustice, maybe. The faceless victim whose real story we still desperately want to know.
And you see that in the culture, the books, the films, the plays. Dumas wasn't the first or the last to be captivated by it. It's woven itself into our historical imagination.
So, wrapping this up, where does the historical consensus generally lean now?
Well, acknowledging the gaps and the contradictions, I think it's fair to say that many, probably most serious historians lean towards Eustache Dauger as the most likely candidate.
The valet who knew too much.
Essentially, yes, a man of perhaps relatively low status, but who somehow became privy to a secret so explosive, so dangerous to the monarchy, that only lifelong masked imprisonment would suffice.
But we have to stress it's not certain. Absolute proof remains elusive.
Absolutely. Locked away in history. The Man in the Iron Mask is still, truly, one of the great unsolved cases. A stark reminder of a secret so profound it was guarded literally to the death and beyond.
It really is a testament to the power and perhaps the paranoia of the state at that time.
It certainly makes you think.
And here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over as we finish this deep dive. Considering everything, the decades of secrecy, the constant moving, the isolation, that persistent mask, the fake burial, the destruction of every last personal item, what kind of secret, even one held by someone described as only a valet, could possibly have been more terrifying, more dangerous to Louis XIV than the actual existence of a twin brother who looked just like him?